The story of Russia and Ukraine is deeply intertwined, with roots that stretch back over a millennium. It all began with the emergence of Kievan Rus in the 9th century, a powerful and influential state that laid the groundwork for the future of both nations. This medieval East Slavic state, centered around the city of Kiev, served as a cultural and political hub. The city of Kiev, with its strategic location along the Dnieper River, became a thriving center of trade, culture, and governance. Kievan Rus played a crucial role in shaping the identities of both Russians and Ukrainians. The state's influence was profound, as it brought together various East Slavic tribes under a single political entity, fostering a sense of unity and shared heritage. Kievan Rus's influence extended across Eastern Europe, leaving a lasting legacy on language, religion, and traditions. The Old East Slavic language, which was spoken in Kievan Rus, evolved into the modern Russian, Ukrainian, and Belarusian languages we know today. The adoption of Orthodox Christianity from Byzantium in the 10th century further cemented Kievan Rus's cultural influence. This monumental event not only shaped the religious landscape of the region but also linked Kievan Rus to the broader Byzantine world. This connection brought with it a rich artistic and religious heritage, as Byzantine art, architecture, and religious practices were integrated into the fabric of Kievan Rus society. The construction of grand churches and the creation of religious manuscripts became hallmarks of this cultural exchange. However, the Mongol invasions of the 13th century shattered the unity of Kievan Rus. The once powerful state was unable to withstand the onslaught of the Mongol forces, leading to its fragmentation and decline. The once powerful state fragmented into rival principalities. These smaller, competing states struggled to maintain their independence and often found themselves at odds with one another, further weakening the region. Despite its fragmentation, the legacy of Kievan Rus remained a potent force in the region. The cultural, religious, and political foundations laid during its height continued to influence the development of Eastern Europe for centuries to come. It provided a shared historical foundation for the development of distinct Russian and Ukrainian identities in the centuries to come. The memory of Kievan Rus served as a touchstone for both nations, reminding them of their common origins and shared past. This shared past, however, would become a source of both connection and contention as Russia and Ukraine charted their own paths. The legacy of Kievan Rus is a testament to the enduring power of history and its ability to shape the destinies of nations. As Russia and Ukraine navigate their complex relationship in the modern era, the echoes of Kievan Rus continue to resonate, reminding both nations of their intertwined heritage and the lessons of their shared history. As Muscovy rose to prominence and eventually transformed into the Russian Empire, it steadily expanded its territories, incorporating Ukrainian lands into its domain. This expansion, however, came at a significant cost for the Ukrainian people. The Tsarist regime implemented policies aimed at assimilating Ukrainians into Russian culture and suppressing their distinct identity and traditions. The use of the Ukrainian language was heavily restricted, particularly in education and government administration. Ukrainian cultural institutions faced closure or heavy censorship, stifling their growth. The Tsarist government aimed to create a homogeneous Russian identity within its vast empire, viewing Ukrainian culture as a threat to its unity and stability. Resistance to these policies grew among Ukrainian intellectuals and artists who sought to preserve their cultural heritage and identity. They worked clandestinely, often facing persecution, to keep the Ukrainian language and traditions alive and thriving. This period under Tsarist rule sowed the seeds of Ukrainian national consciousness and identity. It fostered a deep sense of resentment towards Russian domination and a strong desire for self-determination and independence. The tumultuous events of the Russian Revolution in 1917 provided a brief window of opportunity for Ukrainian independence. The fall of the Tsarist regime created a power vacuum, and amidst the chaos, various national movements saw a chance to assert their autonomy. With the Tsarist regime overthrown, Ukraine declared its independence in 1918. This declaration was a bold move, reflecting the aspirations of many Ukrainians who had long yearned for self-governance and freedom from foreign domination. This newly established Ukrainian People's Republic, however, faced immense challenges from the outset. The leaders of the young republic had to navigate a complex political landscape balancing internal factions and external threats. Internal divisions coupled with invasions from both Soviet Russia and Poland plunged the young nation into chaos. The Ukrainian People's Republic found itself fighting on multiple fronts, struggling to maintain its sovereignty against overwhelming odds. The Ukrainian people, yearning for self-determination after centuries of foreign rule, found themselves caught in the crossfire of competing powers. Their desire for independence was met with brutal resistance from those who sought to control the region. Despite their valiant efforts, the Ukrainian People's Republic was unable to withstand the overwhelming pressure. The relentless assaults from Soviet forces and the Polish army took a heavy toll on the fledgling state. By 1922, Ukraine had been absorbed into the Soviet Union as the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. This incorporation marked the end of Ukraine's brief period of independence and the beginning of a new era of Soviet control. This defeat marked a tragic end to Ukraine's brief foray into independence. The hopes and dreams of many Ukrainians were dashed as their nation was subsumed into the Soviet Empire. It left a deep scar on the national psyche, a constant reminder of the fragility of freedom. The memory of this lost independence would linger in the hearts and minds of Ukrainians for generations to come. The dream of an independent Ukraine, however, would not be extinguished. Despite the Soviet takeover, the spirit of Ukrainian nationalism continued to burn brightly. It would continue to flicker, even in the darkest hours of Soviet rule. Ukrainian resistance movements, cultural preservation efforts, and clandestine nationalist activities kept the hope of independence alive. The struggle for freedom and self-determination would endure, setting the stage for future generations to continue the fight for an independent Ukraine. The incorporation of Ukraine into the Soviet Union ushered in a period of immense hardship and repression. This was a time when the dreams of independence and self-determination for the Ukrainian people were brutally crushed under the weight of Soviet control. The annexation marked the beginning of a dark era characterized by severe political, social, and economic turmoil. The Soviet regime, under Joseph Stalin's leadership, viewed Ukraine's fertile lands and industrial potential as crucial assets for its ambitious modernization plans. Stalin's vision for the Soviet Union included rapid industrialization and collectivization, and Ukraine's rich agricultural resources were seen as essential to achieving these goals. The fertile plains of Ukraine, often referred to as the breadbasket of Europe, were targeted to support the Soviet Union's broader economic strategies. However, this came at a horrific human cost. The Soviet authorities imposed harsh policies that led to widespread suffering and death. The collectivization of agriculture forced Ukrainian farmers to surrender their land and produce to the state, leading to widespread resistance and brutal crackdowns. Those who opposed the regime were often sent to labor camps, where they faced grueling conditions and high mortality rates. One of the most devastating events was the Holodomor, a man-made famine engineered by the Soviet government from 1932 to 1933. This catastrophic famine was not merely a result of poor planning or natural disaster, but a deliberate act of genocide aimed at breaking the spirit of the Ukrainian people. The Soviet government requisitioned grain and other foodstuffs from Ukrainian villages, leaving the local population to starve. Millions of Ukrainians perished from starvation as their grain was confiscated to feed the industrial workforce in other parts of the Soviet Union. The Soviet authorities enforced draconian measures to ensure that no grain was left for the Ukrainian peasants, including sealing off entire regions to prevent the movement of people in search of food. The death toll was staggering, with estimates ranging from 3 to 7 million people. The Holodomor, a Ukrainian word meaning to kill by starvation, remains a deeply traumatic chapter in Ukrainian history. It is remembered as a period of immense suffering and loss, and its legacy continues to shape Ukrainian national identity. Memorials and commemorations of the Holodomor serve as a reminder of the resilience of the Ukrainian people and their enduring struggle for independence and self-determination. Beyond the famine, the Soviet regime implemented a systematic campaign of terror and Russification. This campaign aimed to eradicate Ukrainian cultural identity and replace it with a homogenized Soviet identity centered around Russian language and culture. The Soviet secret police, the NKVD, played a crucial role in enforcing these policies through surveillance, arrests, and executions. Ukrainian intellectuals, artists, and writers were persecuted, disappeared, or executed. The Soviet purges targeted anyone who was seen as a threat to the regime, including those who promoted Ukrainian culture and language. This period saw the decimation of Ukraine's cultural and intellectual elite, as many were arrested on trumped-up charges of nationalism or counter-revolutionary activities. The Ukrainian language and culture once again faced suppression as Russian language and culture were promoted as superior. Ukrainian books were burned and the education system was restructured to prioritize Russian language and Soviet ideology. This systematic erasure of Ukrainian identity was intended to assimilate the population into a unified Soviet state, erasing any sense of national distinctiveness. This period solidified the image of the Soviet Union as a brutal, occupying force in the minds of many Ukrainians. The harsh policies and repressive measures left deep scars on the collective memory of the Ukrainian people. Despite the oppression, resistance persisted, and the desire for independence never waned. The legacy of this era continues to influence Ukraine's path towards sovereignty and its relationship with Russia today.